Hey friends, what's up? Philip here with Points of Phillip, and I'm coming to you with some really huge Chase news that, well, is not that good. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, it's the Chase Sapphire Reserve is their new huge refresh for this year. So they recently redid the refresh of the Chase Sapphire Reserve this past summer. So they raised the annual fee from $550 to $795, and so that's kind of a huge increase. Now, with that, they went ahead and added a bunch of other kind of credits and things that you can kind of play with to try to get that value back, essentially. Now, the problem here is that recently, so when Chase made the announcement that they were changing the Chase Sapphire Reserve, they actually ended up just doing away with one really huge benefit of the card, and that was a portal points bonus when you actually made bookings. So if you made bookings with points, with your Chase Ultimate Reward points, you got a certain amount back. You got 1.5x back on, or cent per point with the Chase Travel Portal if you had the reserve, and 1.35 cents per point with the Chase Sapphire Preferred. And so with those two cards, you had a huge incentive to actually use your Chase points through the portal, particularly when you were making hotel bookings. So when they changed the Chase Sapphire Reserve, they substituted it with a points boost, and that was where you could get 2x back on certain boosted properties through the edit. So some of their high dollar properties where you get really double value for your points. And so if you were targeting those particular properties that Chase wanted you to target, then you got actually more value for your points. But if you were trying to stay at a hotel that wasn't in that particular kind of point boost category, then you were getting a lot less value. And so that became kind of a huge deal, but at least the edit collection and these kind of points boost properties became something that we kind of started to expect. Now, we get into the huge news where yesterday, essentially Chase changed their terms to say that your points are now worth up to 2 cents per point, or 2x when you book a hotel that's part of the edit, instead of it is 2x. And so essentially basically what that means is that some users are finding that their points are a lot less valuable when you're actually booking these edit collection properties with Chase Ultimate Reward points. So what we're seeing, at least according to the Danny the Deal Guru, is that some properties you get lower redemption value rates, like in Chicago, the Langham or the Lowe's Hotel, in Maui, the Andaz, the Hotel Wailea. In Bali, there were a couple of properties as well that you got less value from. So this actually kind of is becoming a huge issue, right? Because they softened the blow of getting rid of this huge, incredible bonus to you get this bonus sometime, and now you only get some of the bonus some of the time. And so this has continually been kind of a downward decrease in value for people who have the Chase Sapphire Reserve. So what's going on here? This is a huge kind of devaluation of someone who's trying to use points. Now, one of the reasons why certain point ecosystems are rated as higher than others is that they're easier to use for most people, right? And so the Chase ecosystem is widely considered, particularly by the Points Guy, to be the highest rated kind of valuation of the bank point system because it's so easy to get value from. Well, the main reason why it's so easy to get value from is, first of all, because the point kind of boost that existed before the refresh, and also this whole point boost that existed after the refresh. But now that this point boost is even less than important, well, that kind of throws into sharp relief why we need to think that Chase points are more worthwhile. And so, especially at least according to kind of if we're booking through the portal. So that kind of is an important question that we need to consider. Now, before we get into the rest of the details of this news, I do want to go ahead and ask you guys to hit like and also subscribe. Doing that helps me kind of get more eyes and helps more people view this content, something I really appreciate. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. So now this also comes fresh on the heels of some new news. So Chase also recently made an announcement where they were enhancing their edit credits. And so essentially the Chase Sapphire Reserve has a $795 annual fee, but it does have a lot more credits that we didn't have before. And one of those credits is for the edit collection. Now, the edit collection is Chase's attempt at the Fine Hotels and Resorts collection, where it's some special high dollar hotels that essentially really kind of are some things that people kind of aspire to stay at. And so The original credit when this card first happened is that it was $500 per year, $250 each month, and so or each 6 months, and so you had to basically wait January through June in order to actually make one particular booking. And in order for the edit collection, it has to be a prepaid booking for 2 nights or more. And so this is kind of the rules of that particular thing. Recently, they changed that particular credit to be where it was just 2 instances any time of the year. So, but capping out at $250 each instance and $500 for the year. And so basically, you did have to make two-night stay bookings. But you could actually, let's say if you travel a lot in the fall, then you could use both of them instead of having to kind of figure out like what you can use the first 6 months of the year and the second 6 months of the year. Now, one positive change that Chase is making is that starting on January 1st, you actually get a separate prepaid Chase travel hotel booking credit of another $250. So then the credit goes from $500 to $750. Now, this particular credit, this one has different rules. So first of all, it has to be a 2-night minimum required for the booking. It has to be through the Chase Travel portal. It has to be a prepaid booking. But there's a limitation on the amount of hotel brands. And so it can only be through IHG, Minor Hotels, Montage Hotels and Resorts, Omni Hotels and Resorts, Pan Pacific Hotels and Resorts, Pendry Hotels and Resorts, and Virgin Hotels. So this is kind of interesting. So now, we do want to kind of take a look at some of these particular properties. Like IHG is interesting because there's a lot of really good IHG properties, considering like Intercontinentals, Kimptons, things like that, and places that most people want to visit. And so this actually could be really good, particularly because, sometimes 2 nights at a Kimpton could be like, say, $500. And so getting essentially a night free with this new credit could be really helpful for some people. Now, one of the things that is interesting is there's the Virgin Hotels that I wanted to kind of lock into because I do have some experience with this, is that if you hold the Virgin Red card and you're able to somehow, like, if it were possible to link your loyalty with Virgin to the stay made through the Chase Travel portal, which because it's probably not going to be through the edit collection, possibly not able to do that. But the Virgin Red Rewards MasterCard actually gets you a free night stay at Virgin Hotels. Now, you do have to stay 2 nights, and you get the 3rd night for free, but just by holding the card, you get a free night at many kind of key properties. There's a Virgin Hotel in Nashville. There's one in New York. There's also a couple in London and one in Edinburgh. And so there's a bunch of different options. And so you can find that you can, with IHG, you can also get kind of, if you have an IHG credit card, you can get a 4th night free on point stays. And so this $250 credit can be helpful, but there's other ways that you can have less expensive cards and still get kind of about the same value. So that's definitely something we want to consider, but at least this is kind of a positive kind of change, because so we're seeing one thing that has continuously gotten worse over time with the new Chase Sapphire Reserve, but we've also seen something that has gotten continually better over time with the Chase Sapphire Reserve. So this is all kind of interesting. It's I guess they're kind of trying to figure out which level or which levers actually kind of make more people spend more time on this card. So that's kind of definitely something to consider. Now, before we get into the rest of the Chase Sapphire Reserve, I want to go ahead and tell you about, a service that I offer. So if you go to pointswithphillip.com, there's a link in the description below. I do have a number of credit card consultations or even travel consultations. If you are someone who is, say, just getting into the credit card space, or if you're kind of trying to figure out how to further refine your particular wallet, I definitely, in those sessions, we kind of work together to figure out what your goals are and kind of figure out how you can make that happen in the shortest amount of time. And so I offer those consultations where we go over your wallet, figure out what your goals are, and figure out what you should be doing in the future. If you're interested in something like that, check that out. There's a link in the description below. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the Chase Sapphire Reserve and kind of figure out whether or not it's worth holding. So for $795, you get, quite a bit. Now, there's a sign-up bonus of 125,000 points, which is decent, right? You get $6,000 in spend in the first 3 months in order to be able to do that. So if you can spend $2,000 a month for 3 months, you can actually get the sign-up bonus for this card. And even if you just cash out those points at 1 cent per point, you're still looking at almost $1,300 in value. So yeah, definitely worthwhile. Now, here's the thing, though. So you do have some interesting multipliers. You get 8x on all purchases through Chase Travel, including the edit. Now, here's the thing. You don't get 8x on the actual, like the credit portion. So if your edit collection hotel stay qualifies for the edit, that portion that they credit back to you doesn't go towards the 8x, but everything above that does. So that's important to note when you're kind of trying to figure out how you should kind of go about figuring out what you need to do with these hotel stays. Now, this card's kind of superpower is that it earns 4x back on flights booked directly and 4x on hotels booked directly, which means this might actually be your hotel card even over, say, a Marriott card, because if you use the Marriott Ritz-Carlton card, which is also issued by Chase, you're only earning 6x Marriott points on that stay from holding the card, or actually from using that physical card. I don't know about you, but I'd much prefer to get 4x Chase Ultimate Reward points than 6x Marriott points. And so that's kind of something you need to consider. You do also get 3x points on dining, and that is worldwide. They're very particular about making sure that gets mentioned. And then 1x back on everything else. And so that's really solid. With this, you do get a very flexible $300 travel credit. Unlike the Ritz-Carlton card, you don't actually have to call and get this applied. It just does automatically. You also get IHG One Rewards Platinum Elite status, and so that's really nice. And then, of course, we get the $500 with the edit collection, the additional $250 with the new hotel credit that we came across, and then you get a Priority Pass Select membership, which, again, you kind of get, it's table stakes for a card of this expense. And so that's kind of important to note. You do get global entry, pre-check, or, things like that. So that's solid too. Now you do get $300 in dining credits. This is $150 in statement credits every 6 months. And it is through kind of Chase's separate kind of open table, private Sapphire tables collection. The amount of restaurants in this collection are small, right? If you're living in a large city, you might have one or two. If you're living in a medium city or a small city, you might not have any that are close by. And so that's important to consider. So it is nice if it works for you, but it's more likely that it probably doesn't work for most people. So just be aware of that. Now you do get complimentary Apple TV as well as Apple Music and and Apple Music. And so that is for a single membership, not a family membership. So that's important to note. You do get $120 in DoorDash or Dash Pass membership and then DoorDash promos, which I'm not going to talk about because they're just ridiculously difficult to use and get value from. And you can actually get similar promos on smaller or lower annual fee cards. $300 in StubHub, $150 every 6 months. And so, that's relatively easy to use in my book. Then you get Peloton, which, honestly, who cares about Peloton at that rate? So you do get a lot of decent kind of travel values and kind of just regular kind of everyday shopping value. I definitely wouldn't get this card without the sign-up bonus, just so if someone gives you an upgrade offer just to hold the card, I wouldn't do that. If you're interested in getting Sapphire Lounge access, the Ritz-Carlton card costs $450 and gets you a lot more in credits. And so it seems like if you're interested in Chase Sapphire Lounges, the Ritz-Carlton could be a better play. And so that's important to consider as well. But anyway, that is the Chase Sapphire Reserve. That's the new news that's going on. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Is this something that you are considering doing? Does this hotel change matter to you? Does the fact that they're devaluing your points while you're booking through the Chase Travel Portal, does that matter to you? Let me know. I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Anyway, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.